Welcome to The Way for Paralegals with your hosts, Marisa Rua and Allison McKeen. This is the podcast for paralegals by paralegals and attorneys who believe that paralegals are the lifeblood of law firms and deserve a place to connect, grow, and engage. All right, let's dive into this episode.
Hey, Marissa.
Hey, Allison.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I was on your LinkedIn, I don't know, a couple days ago, maybe. You've had a lot of interest in some deadline posts about missing deadlines. That was something that would keep me up at night
Yes.
as an attorney. So I'm sure I'm not the only one. What are you thinking about? What have you been talking with people about? What's going on with deadlines?
I think from your perspective as an attorney, you're also relying a lot on your paralegals to where the second or sometimes the first point of contact for deadlines, but it's a mutual relationship of keeping track of those things when you have cases together, which, if you've listened to previous podcasts of ours, we talk about how important it is to have a good relationship with the attorney you work with. And this is one of the biggest things of why I think it's so important to have a great working relationship with the attorney so that you don't miss these important court events, calendaring, deadlines. And there's so many different things that we can miss. But when it comes down to litigation and cases within the court system, there are hard deadlines that you really, really need to pay attention to and make sure that you're on top of and calendaring correctly. That's, I've had very scary times of, like you said, in the middle of the night, God, did I do that? I think one of the most important things you could do is set time on your calendar throughout the week, a few times a week, and make sure that you're not just relying on the person that sends you the court notices, but also going through your own docket because things can get filed the last minute. Court notices can go out that maybe, the person that's checking these notices coming in and sending them over to you, they came in, an hour later or the next day and they didn't send it to you. So I think something really important to do is make sure you're putting time on your calendar to check your court docket weekly throughout the week, either once a day or every other day so that these court notices do not get missed.
What would you say, how would you know if a deadline is a hard deadline? Like you miss this, your case is done potentially. Most things are not triage. Most things you can get an extension of time or there's a little bit of leeway. People understand. But what's the difference? How do you know?
The difference is between we're plaintiff side, so I'll talk from that perspective. The difference is defense counsel filing, let's say a motion for summary judgment or a motion to compel discovery. Those you still have to wait for the court to order. So at that point, it's between either you filing an objection to the defense's motion or the court filing an order, either denying it or placing an order saying, okay, yeah, we agree, plaintiff counsel has to do this. And if they don't, this can happen. So the difference is between a court filing from or a notice from defense counsel and then the court actually putting their order on it, whether they deny it or grant the motion. If the court grants, if the judge says, yes, you need to do this by then, there's no, okay, well, we'll just wait and see what happens. That's either you need to file an extension of time because you know you're not going to have it by then. You need to file your objection to whatever that motion is or whatever corresponds with what that filing is to satisfy the court's requirement. If you ignore what the court order is, your case is like you can't go to court and sit in front of a judge and say, the judge says, nope, you have until, after lunch to, defend your case, and you need to come back here after lunch and have a strong defense. And then you just don't come back from lunch. Like your case can be dismissed. Like you're gonna be in trouble. So the difference is between just a filing that the other side is asking the court to grant, and between the court saying, yep, granted, you need to do this. And if you don't, your case is going to be dismissed. And the repercussions of that on plaintiff's counsel are it's detrimental. Like it's
Yeah.
very
Because the
bad.
plaintiff is running the case.
Right.
They're responsible for advancing the case and sticking to deadlines and making sure things get done. I would add on that too, statutory deadlines
Yes.
are like not negotiable
Right.
normally. Like
Yep.
hard deadlines. If you've got 30 days to send notice or 15 days to file an appeal, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So statutory deadlines, court orders,
Mhm.
and then I guess agreement between the parties, or there's some understood, there's practice book rules. Those can be more flexible.
Right. And when you're working in pre-litigation, a lot of things can be fixed, things can be missed, but although difficult, can be figured out most of the time. As long as you don't exceed the statute and you get things done before that time, a lot of things can be fixed in pre-lit, but when it gets to litigation, and especially if you file something right at the statute of limitations and then it gets dismissed, your client has
That's it.
nothing left. That's
That's it.
it. You can't find another counsel to represent them because you blew the statute by filing it last minute and then getting the case thrown away. So it's a very, very important, I would say one of the most important things in litigation is deadlines.
Yeah. So if you are the kind of person that stays up at night worrying about deadlines,
Mhm.
give yourself months to file a case before the statute of limitations, right? So you have that room if anything goes wrong. So how do you keep track of all of these? Because you've got a big caseload. You've got, I don't know, what did you have? You had 70 files?
Uh, Between 75 and 80, I
Yeah.
had.
So how do you keep track of all of those deadlines and filings? Like,
So, my calendar was my best friend.
did you have a paper calendar or did you
I
have,
had I had 3. So,
yeah,
I had my work calendar on my desktop that I would get alerts, but I always had a notepad. So, I'm, like, writing down things that need to be done either by the end of the day or the week and what needs to be followed up on. And then I also created myself an Excel spreadsheet of all of my cases, and I had them in order by statute of limitations. So, and by when they were filed. If we had just filed a case, that's going to go towards the bottom of the list because I have time after I, you know, file the complaint and the summons and do notices of initial discovery to defense. I know I have some time that things aren't going to happen rapidly. Whereas if there's a case that maybe trial's approaching, I need to focus most of my time on those cases and, check my other ones frequently, but stay on top of those that I know notices are coming in, court orders are being granted, and motions are being filed on. So really, it's how you operate best, but I personally didn't want to miss anything. I don't think anybody really wants to miss anything, but the way it worked best for me was keeping it on my calendar so that everybody could see it. Like if I was out, somebody could see like that's on Marissa's calendar. I need to, help her take care of that. It was also written down because my brain remembers things better when I write them down. And then I would have the Excel spreadsheet just so I could have all of my cases in my face and view things by urgency. Like it was color it was color coded and everything. Like red was statute, this is high on the list. And then green was we have some time for these things. So I think that helped me the best.
so you're constantly looking at these deadlines, constantly keeping them in mind and maybe reorganizing priorities as things shift.
Right. Yeah. And I think the other part that, if you are working in pre litigation, you also need to be aware of the statutes because maybe, the attorneys or the reports are not being pulled on, when the statute's up. You have to be monitoring your docket as well within pre-litigation of what cases are potentially needing to go into litigation very soon so that you can get that off of your plate and into litigation so they can start drafting the complaint and transfer it over to a litigation paralegal who then has enough time to review the case, get up to speed on it so that things do not get delayed. I think that's a big part of it too, is that when you are a litigation paralegal and you get a case that's, the statute's right there on the deadline, you don't have enough time to work it up and see where it's going to go in litigation before it gets filed. Because once it gets filed, discovery gets noticed very quickly. It's one of the first things that defense counsel files. So then you have a certain amount of time, depending on what state you're in, to respond to that. And you want to limit the amount of extensions that you file because it just doesn't look good. Obviously, there are many different circumstances that would prevent you from filing discovery on time, but you want to explain to the court when you're filing these extensions why. It sucks when a bunch of your extensions just say plaintiff's counsel needs an extra time to file this, but it's like why?
Right. So there's
Yeah.
standard discovery.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a standard list of things that you should have ready to go
Right.
when you file that complaint. Is that fair? So most things you should have already set up.
Right. Right.
Are those and those are in practice books? Is that where you would find
Yeah. I
standard
mean,
discovery?
depending on the state, I've worked with so many different firms and discovery looks a little different for everyone. But, Connecticut, I say this all the time, but our judicial system has great resources and it explains when things need to be filed by and how to file them, what forms to use. So if you're just starting out, that's a great resource on top of hopefully somebody at your firm, guiding you a little bit. And even if you've been a paralegal and you're just starting in litigation, it is a different world. I've done both, and litigation is very intense, and you have to be on top of everything all the time in a different way than you are in pre-litigation. It's a lot less client communication and a lot more planning, strategic, type of uh, thinking when you're working in litigation.
Yeah. I mean, it's directly adversarial at that point. Like you've got a court involved, you've got defense counsel, stakes are higher. It's definitely a lot more intense. So what are the conversations that have you had side conversations about discovery deadlines or any kind of deadline really? And what are people dealing with or what's that been like?
I think a lot of people find, I have a large paralegal audience. There's attorneys on there too. And a lot of it is paralegals not, I don't want to say complaining, but having that same experience of I didn't even know about this and it not being easily in your face because they're not told to check these certain things and they don't even know this is a resource to be able to find this information out. And then attorneys, kind of putting it on the paralegal because they messed up. Uh, I mean, both parties can be at fault. It could be the paralegal. They could be responsible for that and they not do their job. But the attorney ultimately, at the end of the day, um, is the person that is supposed to make sure that these things do not happen.
The attorney is ultimately responsible.
Yeah,
Let's be clear.
right,
Like that the buck stops with the attorney.
right.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't want them to get in any sort of trouble, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be the paralegal that, yes, they might get reprimanded or possibly fired because it's serious, but at the end of the day, it's not us who are going to pay the ultimate price. It's the attorney. So they definitely need to have their hands in it just as much as we do. And a second set of eyes is always better than just one person viewing something or calendaring something. And if you're an attorney and you sense that your paralegal is overwhelmed, that would encourage me more to step in and make sure that these things are being calendared, not as somebody who's like being a micromanager, but just giving that little bit of extra help so that they are not missing these things. Just a little bit of a reminder like, hey, don't forget we have this. And it's like, oh crap, thank you so much for telling me. I totally missed that one. Or, oh, I forgot. It was calendared, but they actually changed the date. So thank you for reminding me. I have to change that on both of our calendars.
So frequent communication, more communication versus less. Don't assume that somebody is watching every deadline. I think that goes for attorneys and paralegals. Like, watch out for each other. Keep your own calendar and then make sure the other person it's a team.
Yeah. So.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
Any other tips?
Other tips, I would say communication, definitely.
Don't be afraid to have 3 calendars.
Don't be afraid to have 3 calendars.
Or whatever system works for you.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is that don't be afraid, like, make sure that you're following the firm's procedures, but if you find another way beneficial for yourself, like, don't be afraid to create that just for you on top of, what the firm requires. Because, nobody said, Marissa, you need to make an Excel sheet. It's just like, I found over time that was what was useful for me. And it's nothing that I'm keeping on my personal, stuff. It's my work computer. It's created on there. It's internal. So I would say find what works best for you. The use of AI right now, you can have it pull things for you, but just make sure that you're double checking them. It's just a process that I think would make your time doing the research of what is due a little bit quicker, but make sure that you are also confirming that information is true, but it helps in that speed up the process a bit.
Yeah. And I was the same. I kept a paper calendar. We had a paperless office. So I don't care.
Yeah.
I want a paper calendar so I can jot my notes in it and my to-do list, and which I can't do on Google.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, whatever works.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Marissa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Way for Paralegals. If you like what you heard, please follow, rate, and review the show. Until next time, keep being all that.